When I walked into the house for the Christmas Eve dinner, I saw our daughter-in-law mocking the burn scars on my wife's body right in front of the dining table. My son just laughed. Right behind me, her father arrived. I was about to go and speak with him, but when he saw my wife's scars, his face went pale. "I know those scars," he murmured. "But let me tell you the story from the beginning." It's about how a man who built a respectable life discovered that his family didn't value the greatest sacrifice of all, the life-saving love that comes at the cost of one's own body, and how a Christmas dinner became the moment the truth finally came to light. My name is Edward Hayes. I'm 61 years old, and I own a chain of home improvement stores across the southern United States, a company I founded 32 years ago. I started with a single small store in Atlanta, Georgia, and today I have 18 branches across 3 states. The company generates annual revenues of roughly $4 million. I built everything from the ground up through honest work and constant sacrifice. But none of that matters as much as what I'm about to tell you. Because this story isn't about money or success. It's about respect, gratitude, and how the scars on someone's body can tell a tale of heroism that some people prefer to forget. My wife is Alara. She's 59. She is the bravest woman I know, though she would never say it herself. She has been a middle school math teacher for 35 years, guiding teenagers with endless patience. She is kind, generous, humble. And she carries on her body the marks of a night that changed our lives forever. Alara has severe burn scars on her right arm, shoulder, part of her neck, and along her right side. They are old scars from 25 years ago, but they are still visible. The skin has that irregular texture, that different color that never fully disappears, no matter how many treatments you try. For years, she wore long-sleeved blouses, scarves, anything to cover them. Not out of personal shame, but because people stared, asked questions, or made inappropriate comments. But 10 years ago, Alara made a decision. She would no longer hide the scars. They were part of her history, part of who she was, and anyone who had a problem with them. That was exactly it, their problem, not hers. Those scars tell a story of pure heroism, one that our son, Jackson, should remember every day of his life with absolute gratitude. Instead, he sees them as something embarrassing, something to hide, something to mock. 25 years ago, we lived in a 2-story house in the heart of Atlanta. It was an older but beautiful place with wooden floors and large windows. Jackson, or Jax, as we called him, was 7 years old then. He was our only child, a bright, energetic boy who was the center of our world. One night in March, around 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up to the smell of smoke. At first, I thought it was from the street, maybe a bonfire, but the odor was too strong, too close. I got up, and when I opened the bedroom door, I saw the hallway engulfed in smoke. "Alara, fire! There's a fire!" We got up immediately. The fire had started in the kitchen, apparently due to a short circuit in the house's old wiring. It had already consumed the entire ground floor and was rushing up the stairs. The heat was intense, and the smoke was suffocating. "Jax!" Alara screamed. "Jackson is in his room." Jackson's room was at the end of the hall, across the main fire, which had already blocked the stairwell. There was no way to reach him without passing through the flames. "Edward, call 911. I'm going for him." "Alara, no. Wait for the firefighters. There's no time. Look how fast the fire is growing. By the time they arrive, it'll be too late." And before I could stop her, Ilara soaked a sheet in the bathroom, wrapped it around her body, and ran toward the blazing hallway. What followed were the 5 longest minutes of my life. From the window of the master bedroom, I yelled for help as I watched smoke pour out of every window in the house. Neighbors began to gather. Someone had already called the fire department, but everything seemed to move in slow motion. And then, through Jackson's bedroom window, I saw Ilara. She had reached him. She was holding him, trying to open the window, which was stuck shut from the heat. I watched the flames lick at her arm, her shoulder, her body, as she struggled with the frame. Finally, she managed to force it open. The neighbors had placed a ladder, and Ilara lowered Jax down first, making sure he was safe before climbing down herself. By the time she reached the ground, her clothes were burned, her skin was red and blistered, and she collapsed in the yard. The fire department arrived minutes later and contained the blaze, but the damage was done. The house was destroyed, and Ilara was left with second and third-degree burns over approximately 20% of her body. They rushed her to the hospital by ambulance. Jackson was fine, only suffering from smoke inhalation, but physically intact. Ilara was in a hospital bed, battling the most intense pain a human being can experience. The doctor who treated her that night was named Dr. Henry Rhodes. He was a young, talented, and dedicated burn specialist who had just returned from a fellowship. He became Ilara's guardian angel for the next 6 months. Ilara required multiple surgeries, skin grafts, treatments to prevent infection, and physical therapy to regain movement in her arm. It was 6 months of constant pain, painful procedures, and moments when I thought I would lose her, not from the injuries, but from physical and emotional exhaustion. But Dr. Rhodes never gave up. He visited Ilara every day, adjusting treatments, trying new techniques, making sure she received the best possible care. And he always told her the same thing. "Ms. Ilara, you are a hero. What you did for your son is the bravest thing I've ever seen. These scars are nothing to be ashamed of. They are badges of honor." Ilara eventually recovered. Not completely. The scars remained, and always would, but she regained movement in her arm. She regained her life. She regained her ability to teach and live normally. A few months after Ilara was discharged, Dr. Rhodes moved away. He received a job offer at a prestigious hospital in New York City. We said goodbye with deep gratitude and promises to keep in touch. That slowly faded, as often happens when life moves on. Jackson was 7 when Ilara saved him, and for years he was a grateful child. He hugged his mother every day. He told her he loved her, that she was his hero. At school, he proudly told his friends how his mom had rescued him from the fire. But something changed as Jackson grew older. Maybe it was adolescence, maybe it was social pressure, or maybe he simply forgot. He forgot the terror of that night. He forgot the sacrifice. He forgot that he was alive only because his mother ran through the flames for him. When Jackson was 15, he started to become embarrassed by Ilara's scars. "Mom, why don't you just wear a long-sleeved shirt?" he'd say when they had school events. "People stare at you weird." Ilara would try to explain. "Jackson, these scars are because I saved you. They are not something to be ashamed of." "I know, Mom, but people don't understand, and it's uncomfortable having to explain it all the time." Over the years, the situation got worse. Jackson stopped inviting friends over to the house. He stopped wanting Ilara to attend his events, and when we asked why, his answer was always the same. "It's complicated, Dad. You don't get what it's like at school." I tried to talk to him. I tried to make him understand the magnitude of what Ilara had done, But Jackson would just shrug, mumble something about already knowing, and change the subject. Alara was hurt by his attitude, but being who she was, she always found excuses. He's a teenager, Edward. All teenagers are embarrassed by their parents. He'll grow out of it. But he didn't grow out of it. It got worse. Jackson studied business administration at a college in Charlotte, North Carolina. We paid for his college, his apartment, everything. During those years, he visited infrequently. He always had excuses: homework, exams, projects. When he did come home, the visits were brief, tense, as if he were fulfilling an obligation rather than enjoying time with his family. 3 years ago, Jackson met Danielle, a 28-year-old corporate lawyer from an affluent New York family. She was attractive, educated, and sophisticated. And from the first moment I met her, something unsettled me. Danielle, or Danny, had a way of looking at Alara that wasn't kind. It was evaluative, critical, as if she were looking for flaws. And when she saw Alara's scars, though she tried to hide it, I saw judgment in her eyes. During their courtship, Danielle started making comments that sounded like concern, but were clearly veiled criticisms. "Mrs. Alara, have you considered laser treatments for the scars? Nowadays, there are incredible technologies that can really improve the skin's appearance. I've tried several treatments over the years, Danielle. These are the results after all that effort." "I understand. It's just that, well, for the wedding photos, it would be ideal if they were less noticeable, perhaps with professional makeup or something." I saw the pain in Alara's eyes, but as always, she responded with grace. "I'll see what I can do." Jackson did not defend his mother. He stayed silent, as if Danielle's comments were reasonable, as if Alara had an obligation to hide the scars she earned saving his life. The wedding was 2 years ago, an elegant ceremony in Charlotte with 200 guests. Throughout the planning, Danielle had suggestions about how Alara should dress, how she should style her hair, and how she should manage the scars so they wouldn't be distracting in the photos. Alara did as they asked. She wore a beautiful but uncomfortable long-sleeved dress in the June heat. She covered her neck with an elegant scarf. She applied makeup to the visible parts of the scars to make them less noticeable, all so that her son and daughter-in-law wouldn't be ashamed of her on their own day. During the reception, as I watched Alara uncomfortable in the clothes that covered her completely, as I watched her smile, despite the pain of being treated like something that needed to be hidden, I made a decision. If Jackson and Danielle continued down this path, if they continued treating Alara with this lack of respect, there would be consequences. I didn't know what kind yet, but I knew I couldn't allow it to continue indefinitely. After the wedding, Jackson and Danielle moved to New York City, where they both worked. Visits became rare, calls became brief, and when they did visit, Danielle always found something to criticize, something to improve, something to fix. And the worst part was that Jackson supported her, or at least he didn't stop her. He had become a passive spectator while his wife treated his mother with barely disguised disdain. This year, for the Christmas Eve dinner, Jackson and Danielle promised to come home. It was the first time that we would see them in 6 months. Alara was excited, cooking for days, preparing all of Jackson's favorite dishes: roast turkey, cornbread dressing, mac and cheese, collard greens, sweet potato pie. The house smelled of spices and love. She had decorated with lights, a beautiful Christmas tree, and all the spirit of the season. "Edward, maybe this Christmas will be different," she said. "Maybe Danielle has softened. Maybe Jackson will remember. Maybe, love, but be prepared if it's not. I'm always optimistic. It's my nature." And that was the truth. Alara, despite everything she had endured, remained optimistic, still believing in the goodness of people, still hoping her son would remember the love she had given him all his life. Dinner was planned for 8 o'clock on December 24th. Jackson and Danielle would arrive around 7 to help with the final preparations. And they had mentioned that Danielle's father, who is visiting them from New York, would come along. "He's Dr. Rhodes," Danielle had said over the phone. "My father is a burn specialist. I hope you don't mind us bringing him." "Of course not," Alara had replied. "Any of Jackson's family is welcome." But when I heard the surname Rhodes, when I heard he was a burn specialist, something clicked in my memory. Could it be? Could it be the same Dr. Henry Rhodes who had saved Alara 25 years ago? The world was a big place, and there were many doctors named Rhodes, but the coincidence was striking. I mentioned the possibility to Alara. "Do you think it could be the same doctor?" "I don't know. It would be incredible if it were. I always wanted to properly thank him for everything he did." "Well, then maybe this Christmas will bring us a pleasant surprise." In addition to seeing Jackson, December 24th arrived. Alara had spent the entire day cooking. I arrived home a little late because I had to personally close one of the hardware stores since the manager had gotten sick. It was around 7:30 when I parked my car in the driveway, and then I heard something that made my blood boil. Through the open living room window, I heard Danielle's voice, loud and mocking. "Seriously, Mrs. Alara, are you going to wear that blouse? All your scars are showing. You look like you were in a terrible accident." And then I heard something worse. I heard the laughter of my son, Jackson, the boy Alara had saved at the cost of her own body, laughing at his mother's scars. I froze in the entrance for a moment, processing what I had just heard. My son's laughter, my daughter-in-law's mockery, directed at the woman who had literally run through fire to save Jackson's life. I took a deep breath, controlling the rage that threatened to erupt, because I knew that if I burst in screaming, if I confronted them immediately, I would lose the opportunity for this to be resolved in the right way. I needed to think. I needed strategy. Then I heard another voice from inside, Ilara's voice, trying to sound cheerful, despite the pain I knew she was feeling. "It's the blouse I always wear on Christmas, Danielle. Edward really likes it." "Well, maybe Edward needs to update his taste," Danielle replied with a false laugh. "Jackson, tell your mom to wear something more appropriate. Other guests are going to arrive. We don't want them to feel uncomfortable." "Mom, Danielle has a point. Maybe you could put on something with longer sleeves, or a shawl over your shoulders." That was enough. I opened the door and walked in. The three of them were in the living room. Alara was standing next to the Christmas tree with an expression that tried to hide her hurt. Jackson was comfortably seated on the sofa, with a beer in his hand, and Danielle was beside him, with a smile that froze when she saw me. "Good evening," I said with a tone that left no room for confusion about my mood. "Dad," Jackson said, quickly standing up. "You're late?" "Yes, I had to close the store, but I arrived just in time, it seems." "In time for what?" Danielle asked with feigned innocence. "In time to hear the conversation you were having about Alara's clothing." The silence that followed was heavy. Jackson looked at the floor. Danielle adjusted her posture, preparing to defend herself, and Alara looked at me with pleading eyes that clearly said, "Please, don't make a scene." But for once in my life, I was going to ignore that silent plea, because Alara deserved to have someone defend her, especially when her own son wouldn't. "Danielle, that blouse you're criticizing that is the same one Alara has worn every Christmas for 20 years. And the scars you find so offensive are the result of my wife running through a burning building to save your husband's life. Mr. Edward, with all due respect, I was just suggesting." "You weren't suggesting. You were mocking." And I heard it clearly. And Jackson intervened, trying to smooth things over. "Dad, no one was mocking. We were just having a conversation about fashion, about what looks best. And you, Jackson? Do you also think your mother needs to hide the scars she earned saving you? It's not that. It's just, Dad, we live in a world where appearance matters, and Mom could make a small effort to look more presentable. Something broke inside me. Not explosive fury, but something colder, more calculated. Because my son, the man I raised, educated, and supported through everything, had just called his mother not presentable because of the scars she carried from saving him. Alara, I said, turning to my wife, can you go to the kitchen for a moment? I need to speak with Jackson and Danielle alone. Edward, please, I don't want this to ruin Christmas. It's not going to ruin anything. I just need to clarify a few things. Alara left the room with slumped shoulders, and when the door closed behind her, I turned to Jackson and Danielle with an expression that left no doubt about my seriousness. Here is what's going to happen. You are going to apologize to Alara. You are going to tell her you were completely wrong, and you are going to spend this Christmas treating her with the respect she deserves. Or you can leave right now. Dad, are you overreacting? Overreacting? Jackson, your mother literally ran through fire for you. She suffered unimaginable pain during months of recovery. She carries those marks on her body every single day as a reminder of the greatest sacrifice a parent can make. And you laugh at them, you're ashamed of them. How can you even look at yourself in the mirror? It's just that you don't understand the social pressure, Dad. People judge. Let them judge. And you should be defending your mother, not joining those who criticize her. Danielle finally spoke, her tone sharper. Mr. Edward, with all respect, I think you're being overly sensitive about this. It was just an observation about clothes, not a personal attack. Overly sensitive? Danielle, let me tell you something about those scars. Each one of them represents a moment when Alara was more concerned about her son's life than her own safety. Each one is a badge of courage that most people will never earn. And if you cannot see that, if all you see is something that makes you aesthetically uncomfortable, then you are exactly the kind of person I don't want in my home. Are you kicking me out? I'm giving you the option to stay with respect or leave with your superficiality. Jackson stood up, clearly annoyed. Dad, you can't talk to my wife like that. I can, and I am, because someone needs to set boundaries here, and since you won't do it, I will. Just then, the doorbell rang. The three of us stood in tense silence, and I went to answer the door. On the other side stood a man of about 65, well-dressed, with gray hair and a kind expression. He carried a bottle of wine and a wrapped gift. Good evening. I'm Dr. Henry Rhodes, Danielle's father. Please, excuse my tardiness. The traffic was terrible. In that moment, everything connected. It was him. It was the Dr. Henry Rhodes who had saved Alara 25 years ago. Older, grayer, but definitely him. Dr. Rhodes, I said, extending my hand. Edward Hayes, it's an honor to welcome you to our home. The honor is mine. Danielle has told me so much about you all. I doubted she had spoken well of us, but I maintained my courtesy. Please, come in. There's something I need to speak with you about before you enter completely. Is something wrong? Something very important about your daughter, my son, and my wife. I led him to the side porch, away from the living room where Jackson and Danielle could hear, and quickly told him what I had heard, what I had witnessed, the way Danielle had treated Alara. Dr. Rhodes listened with an increasingly serious expression. That doesn't sound like the daughter I raised. Danielle can be direct sometimes, but mocking someone's scars? That is unacceptable. Doctor, there's something else you should know. My wife, Elara, I think you know her. 25 years ago, there was a house fire. Elara suffered severe burns saving our son. And the doctor who treated her, the doctor who saved her life, was you. I saw recognition appear in his eyes, followed by shock. Elara? Elara Hayes is your wife? No, it can't be. I didn't know Danielle had married your son. I never made the connection. And for all these years, I've wondered what happened to Elara. If she recovered completely, if she had a good life. She had a wonderful life, until our son decided her scars were something to be ashamed of. I need to see her. I need to speak with her. And Mr. Hayes, I need you to know that if my daughter is acting the way you describe, I am going to correct that immediately. Then come with me. We entered the house together. Jackson and Danielle were still in the living room, now whispering to each other, likely complaining about my overreaction. Elara had emerged from the kitchen, standing by the dining room table, arranging the last details. When Dr. Rhodes saw her, he stopped dead in his tracks. Elara, hearing the footsteps, turned around. Their eyes met, and I watched her process who the man in front of her was. Dr. Rhodes, she whispered. Elara. My God, Elara. He approached her with slow steps, as if seeing a ghost. And when he was close, when he could see the scars on her arm, her shoulder, her neck, his face turned pale. I know those scars, he murmured, his voice filled with emotion. I treated them. I was there every day for 6 months, making sure you would heal. Doctor, I can't believe it's you after all these years. Let me look at you properly. With Elara's silent permission, Dr. Rhodes examined the scars with professional eyes, but also with something deeper. With the pride of an artist seeing his work, with the emotion of a savior, reconnecting with someone he saved. They look good, Elara. Much better than I feared in those early days. The grafts took perfectly. The arm movement was preserved. You did all the physical therapy I recommended, didn't you? Every day for 2 years. Doctor, you saved my life. No, you saved yourself by being strong enough to survive. I just helped with the technical part. Danielle had entered the dining room, watching the scene with growing confusion. Dad, you know Mrs. Elara? Dr. Rhodes turned to his daughter with an expression I had never seen. Pure disappointment and contained fury. Yes, Danielle. I know Elara. 25 years ago, I treated her burns after she ran through a burning building to save her son's life. It was one of the most severe cases I have ever treated. It was also one of the most inspiring, because Elara never gave up, never complained, and always maintained a positive attitude despite the terrible pain. I didn't know. Clearly, you didn't know much, because if you knew, if you understood, even a fraction of what Elara suffered, what she sacrificed, you would never, ever have dared to mock her scars. What? Who told you that? Mr. Edward told me, and I need to know if it's true. Did you mock Elara's scars? Did you make comments about her appearance? Did you treat with contempt the woman who carries on her body the marks of heroism that you could never equal? Danielle looked at Jackson, seeking support, but my son, for the first time, seemed to realize the magnitude of what he had done. He was pale, his hands shaking. Dad, I was just suggesting she might wear different clothes. Suggesting, Danielle. I know the difference between a suggestion and mockery. And according to Mr. Edward, not only did you make inappropriate comments, but Elara's son, the man who is alive only because she ran through the fire, laughed right along with you. All eyes turned to Jackson. My son, the coward, tried to defend himself. It was just a nervous laugh. I didn't mean to... A nervous laugh, I interrupted him. Jackson, I heard you clearly. There was nothing nervous about that laugh. It was pure mockery. Ilara finally spoke, her voice breaking. Jackson, why? Why are you so ashamed of the scars I earned saving you? Mom, I'm not ashamed. Yes, you are. You've made it clear for years, since you were a teenager. You didn't want me to go to your events. You didn't want me to meet your friends. You always asked me to cover up more. And I thought you would eventually get over it, that you would eventually understand, but you got worse. And now you're married to someone who shares that disdain. Mrs. Ilara, I don't have disdain, Danielle began. Silence, Dr. Sorodes said with a tone that allowed no argument. Don't say another word, because every word that comes out of your mouth now will only make things worse. He turned toward Ilara with a look of genuine apology. Ilara, on behalf of my daughter, I ask for your forgiveness, even though I know it's not enough. I raised Danielle to be better than this, to have empathy, to respect people, especially those who have suffered. Clearly, I failed somewhere in her education. Doctor, you don't have to apologize for. Yes, I do, because even though Danielle is an adult and responsible for her own actions, I am her father. And seeing my daughter behave this way breaks my heart. Dad, are you overstating all of this? Danielle attempted. Overstating? Danielle, do you know how many times during those 6 months of treatment I thought Ilara wouldn't survive? How many nights I stayed awake researching new techniques, new treatments, because I couldn't accept losing such a brave patient? Ilara is not just an old patient to me. She is a reminder of why I chose this specialty, to save heroes like her. Dr. Rhodes turned to me. Mr. Edward, I understand completely if you want Danielle and me to leave. This behavior is unforgivable. No, Doctor, you are welcome here. It's Jackson and Danielle who need to decide if they can stay with respect or if they prefer to leave. Jackson finally spoke, and for the first time in years, I heard something close to sincerity in his voice. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. You're right. I've been an idiot. I've let the opinion of others matter more than honoring your sacrifice, and I have no excuse. And what changed, Jackson? I asked. Why are you apologizing now? Is it because Dr. Rhodes confronted you? Because you realize there are consequences? It's because hearing Dr. Rhodes talk about what Mom suffered and seeing him treat her scars with such respect, it made me see how awful I've been. Mom, those scars should be something I celebrate, not something I'm ashamed of. Ilara had tears streaming down her face. Jackson, I just wanted you to be proud of me. I just wanted you to remember that everything I did was out of love. I know, Mom, and I'm so sorry. The silence that followed Jackson's apology was heavy, laden with years of accumulated pain, unspoken words, and resentments finally coming to the surface. Ilara wept softly, and for the first time in years I saw my son truly confronting what he had done, the damage he had caused. But I wasn't satisfied with words, because words were easy. Apologies in the moment of confrontation were convenient. What I needed to see was whether this remorse was genuine or simply a reaction to being exposed in front of Dr. Rhodes. Jackson, I said with a cold tone, apologies are a start, but they are not enough. Not after years of making her feel less than, of being ashamed of her, of allowing your wife to treat her with contempt. I know, Dad, and I'm going to make things right. I'm going to change. How? How exactly are you going to make things right? Jackson looked at Ilara, then at me, searching for the right words. I'm going to... I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth, that Mom is a hero, that these scars are something honorable. That sounds good in theory, but I need more than vague promises. Dr. Rhodes intervened, still standing next to Alara, like a protector. Mr. Edward is right, Jackson. Your mother deserves more than words. She deserves sustained action over years, not just an apology the moment you were confronted. Danielle had been silent during this entire exchange, but she finally spoke in a small voice I barely recognized. Mrs. Alara, I'm sorry too. I know my apology probably doesn't mean much now, but it's genuine. I didn't understand the story behind the scars, and although that doesn't excuse my comments, I want you to know that if you had known the story, would you have been more respectful, Danielle? I interrupted her. You shouldn't need to know the story of someone's scars to treat them with basic respect. All scars, all marks on a person's body have a history, and none of those histories deserve mockery. You're right, completely right. And beyond that, I continued, you've been married to Jackson for 2 years. At some point during that time, did he ever tell you how his mother got those scars? Did he ever mention that she saved him from a fire? Danielle looked at Jackson, who was looking increasingly uncomfortable. He mentioned a fire when he was a kid, but he never went into detail. And I never asked. Because you didn't care, Alara said softly. You didn't care to really know me, to know my story. You only cared about how I looked, if I fit your image of what a mother-in-law should be. Mrs. Alara, that's not fair. It's not fair. Danielle, for 2 years you've made comments about my appearance, about my clothes, about my scars, always disguised as suggestions or concern, but all with the same message, that I wasn't good enough just as I am. Dr. Rhodes placed a gentle hand on Alara's shoulder. Alara, you have every right to be upset. And I would like to say something, if you'll allow me. Of course, Doctor. He turned to the entire family gathered in the dining room. I have been a burn specialist for 40 years. I have seen thousands of patients, thousands of cases, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that Alara is one of the bravest people I have ever met. Not just for what she did that night of the fire, but for how she handled the months of recovery that followed. He turned specifically to Jackson. You were 7 years old then, so maybe you don't remember the details, but your mother suffered pain that most people cannot imagine. Third-degree burns are the most painful a human being can experience. The dressing changes were agonizing. The skin grafts required multiple surgeries. The physical therapy to regain arm movement was brutal. I didn't know it was that bad, Jackson murmured. How did you not know? You never asked. You never wanted to know what your mother suffered for you. My parents never talked about it. They said it was better not to remember, because your mother didn't want you to carry the guilt, Dr. Rhodes said. But Jackson, that doesn't mean you should forget the sacrifice. It means you should honor it. Alara finally spoke again, wiping her tears. I never wanted Jackson to feel guilty. He was a child. The fire wasn't his fault. But I hoped that when he grew up, when he understood, that he would be proud to have a mother who loved him enough to run through fire for him. I'm proud, Mom. I swear I really am. But your actions for years have said the opposite. Not inviting me to events, asking me to cover up, laughing when your wife mocks my scars. Those aren't actions of pride, Jackson. They are actions of shame. You're right. And Mom, I'm going to spend the rest of my life making it up to you, proving to you that I truly appreciate what you did. I intervened again. Hold on, Jackson. Before you make any more promises, there's something you need to understand. This isn't the first time your mother has been hurt by your behavior. This has been going on for years, and every time she forgave you, made excuses for you, hoped you would change. But I no longer have that patience. What do you mean? I mean, there are consequences. Not just words, but real consequences. What kind of consequences? I took out my phone and opened the document I had prepared 6 months earlier. After the last time, Jackson had made a hurtful comment about Elara. It was a document I hoped I wouldn't have to use, but which now seemed necessary. 6 months ago, after you asked your mother not to attend your work presentation because the clients might feel uncomfortable, I went to my lawyer and prepared some changes to my will. I saw the panic appear in Jackson's eyes. Dad, no. Let me finish. Originally, all my assets were intended for you. The hardware stores, the properties, the investments, everything. Approximately $5 million in total assets. But after years of watching you treat your mother with disrespect, of watching you prioritize the opinion of strangers over the love of the woman who saved you, I made a decision. The will now states that you only receive 30% of the estate. The remaining 70% goes to charities that work with burn victims to help other people, like your mother, who need treatment and support. Dad, you can't do that. I already did. It's filed, it's legal, it's permanent. Unless what? Unless you prove over the next 5 years that you have truly changed, that you treat your mother with the respect she deserves, that you publicly take pride in her and her story, that you educate any children you have about the sacrifice their grandmother made. If you do all that, if you sustain it for 5 full years without relapsing, then I will consider modifying the will. 5 years is a long time. 5 years is nothing compared to the 25 years your mother has lived with those scars. If you cannot commit to 5 years of basic respect, then you definitely don't deserve the inheritance. Danielle looked dismayed. Mr. Edward, that seems excessive. One mistake shouldn't cost so much. It's not one mistake, Danielle. It's years of consistent behavior. And tonight you just demonstrated that you share the same lack of respect. So let me be clear. If you continue to treat Elara this way, you will not only affect Jackson's inheritance, but you will also be cut off completely from this family. No more dinners, no more celebrations, no more support of any kind. Dr. Rhodes nodded in approval. Mr. Edward, I think you're being more than fair. And Danielle, you need to understand that actions have consequences. You can't treat people badly and expect no repercussions. But Dad, Danielle began. Don't call me Dad right now. I am deeply disappointed in you. And Danielle, this affects our relationship as well. Because if you cannot respect a woman who suffered the unspeakable to save her son, how can I trust your judgment in any other area? Are you being dramatic? No, I'm being realistic. Elara is not just an old patient to me. She's a reminder of all the good that medicine can do, of all the bravery human beings can possess. And seeing you mock her scars, makes me question everything I thought I had taught you about empathy and compassion. Danielle began to cry, but these were not manipulative tears. They were the tears of someone who finally understood the magnitude of what she had done. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. You should have known, regardless of the story, regardless of the circumstances. You should never mock someone's scars. Never. Elara, being the person she was, finally intervened with compassion. Dr. Rhodes, Danielle is your daughter, and although she hurt me, I can see that she is learning. We all deserve opportunities to learn and grow. Elara, you are too generous. After everything you've endured, I've endured a lot, but I've also learned that holding on to resentment only hurts me. So, Danielle, I accept your apology, but I need to see real change, not just words. I will, Mrs. Elara. I promise. I turned back to Jackson. And you, son, I need you to understand something very important. Your mother and I won't be here forever. I'm 61. She's 59. And when we're gone, when it's too late, I don't want you to carry the remorse of having treated her badly during her final years. Because that remorse, that guilt, is something that will haunt you for the rest of your life. I understand, Dad. I truly do. I've heard your promises before, and every time you revert to old patterns. So, this time, I need more than promises. I need real commitment. What do you want me to do? I want you to start by telling the story, the complete story, not just to Danielle, but to everyone, to your friends, to your colleagues, to anyone who has ever seen your mother's scars and wondered. I want you to say with pride, my mother is a hero who saved my life by running through fire. I will. And I want you to come to visit her regularly, not once every 6 months, but at least once a month. Quality time where you really talk, where you get to know her as the person she is, not just the mother who saved you 25 years ago. I can do that. And finally, I want that when you have children, you teach them from a young age about their grandmother's sacrifice, that they grow up knowing that scars are not something to be ashamed of, but marks of love and courage. When we have children, it will be the first thing we teach them, Jackson promised, looking at Danielle, who nodded with tears still streaming down her face. Dr. Rhodes looked at his watch. Mr. Edward, Elara, if you'll allow me, I would like to stay for dinner, not just for Danielle, but because I genuinely want to spend time with you, to get to know you after all these years, to celebrate that Elara not only survived, but thrived. That would be an honor, Doctor, Elara said with a genuine smile for the first time that night. But first, Dr. Rhodes continued, I would like to do something, Elara. Would you allow me to document your scars photographically, with your full permission? Because I am writing a book about extraordinary cases in my career, and your story deserves to be told. Not just the medical aspect, but the human story behind those scars. A book? Yes, a book about the heroism of burn patients, about how they survive not just physically, but emotionally. And Elara, your case is one of the most inspiring I have ever had. If you agree, of course. There is absolutely no pressure. Elara looked to me for my opinion. What do you think, Edward? I think it's a beautiful opportunity to honor your sacrifice, to ensure your story inspires others who are going through something similar. Then yes, Doctor, it would be an honor to be part of your book. Excellent. We'll coordinate the photos and interviews in the coming weeks. Jackson approached his mother, hesitating for a moment before embracing her. Mom, thank you for saving me 25 years ago, for forgiving me today, for being the strongest person I know. Elara hugged him back, crying, Jackson, you are my son. You will always be my son. And I love you no matter what. But I need you to respect me too. I will, I promise you. The Christmas Eve dinner finally began, almost 2 hours late, but with a completely different energy than it would have been. Dr. Rhodes told stories from his career, about other brave patients, about the advancements in burn treatment over the last 25 years. Elara shared memories of her recovery, painful things she had never told me, but also inspiring things. And Jackson listened to everything. He truly listened for the first time in years. I saw understanding grow in his eyes, remorse settling in, and the determination to be better forming. Danielle also participated, asking questions, showing genuine interest. And although there was still tension, there was also hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this night had been the turning point this family needed. When dinner ended, when gifts were exchanged, when the punch was served, I sat in the living room looking at my family. Alara and Dr. Rhodes were talking about the book he planned to write. Jackson was showing Danielle old photos from before the fire, explaining what life was like then. And for the first time in years, I felt real hope. Not the blind hope that things would magically get better, but the evidence-based hope that finally, after years of silence and accumulated resentment, we had had the conversation we needed to have. Alara's scars would never disappear, but maybe, just maybe, the way the family saw them had changed forever. The days after that Christmas were different, not dramatically transformed immediately, but subtly changed in ways that mattered. Jackson called Alara every day, not just to check in superficially, but to genuinely talk. He asked about her day, her students, her feelings, and, most importantly, he listened to the answers. Danielle called too, although less frequently, and with an awkwardness that hadn't completely disappeared. But at least she was trying, and that was something. Dr. Rhodes kept his promise. 2 weeks after Christmas, he came to our house with a professional photographer and a recording crew. He spent 3 hours documenting Alara's scars from every angle, with professional lighting, and with absolute care and respect. These photos are going to be part of a complete chapter in the book, he explained while working. Not just about the medical treatment, but about the human story, about why it happened, about your recovery, about how you've lived with the scars for 25 years. Doctor, I never thought my scars could help someone else, Alara said as he worked. Alara, your story can help thousands. Other burn patients who are struggling with the acceptance of their own scars, families who are learning how to support a loved one with burns, anyone who needs an example of pure courage. During the photo session, Jackson and Danielle arrived unannounced. They said they were passing through the area, but I knew they had come intentionally. Perhaps to show support, perhaps to see the process with their own eyes. Jackson watched Dr. Rhodes work with his mother's scars, treating them with reverence, explaining the history behind each mark to the photographer. And I watched my son cry silently, finally processing, after so many years, what his mother had endured for him. When the session ended, Jackson approached Dr. Rhodes. Doctor, can I ask you something? Of course. When my mother was in the hospital, when you were treating her, did you ever think she wouldn't survive? Dr. Rhodes considered the question carefully. Honestly, yes. There were moments during the first 2 weeks where her condition was critical. The burns were extensive. The risk of infection was high. Her body was in shock. There was a real probability she wouldn't make it. And what changed? What made her survive? Her sheer willpower. Your mother, Jackson, is one of the most determined people I have ever met. Every day, regardless of the pain, regardless of how difficult the therapy was, she got up and fought. And when I asked her where she got that strength, do you know what she told me? What did she tell you? I have a 7-year-old son who needs me. I cannot give up. You were her motivation, Jackson. Every day, for 6 months of brutal treatment, she thought of you, of watching you grow up, of being there for you, of making sure the sacrifice she made was worth it. Jackson broke down. He sat on the saw with his head in his hands, sobbing in a way I hadn't seen since he was a small child. And I repaid her with shame, with years of making her feel like those scars were a bad thing. Alara sat next to him, placing her scarred arm around his shoulders. Jackson, look at me. My son lifted his head, his eyes red and swollen. I didn't do what I did expecting eternal gratitude. I did it because I love you, because you are my son. And even though you hurt me with your shame, I also understand that you were young, that social pressure is real, that you made mistakes. But they were years of mistakes. Mom, you can't change the past, but you can change the future. And Jackson, that's what I need from you now. Not guilt, not pity, but action. Show me with your actions over the coming years that you understand, that you value, that you are proud. I will. I swear. Danielle also approached, kneeling in front of Alara. Mrs. Alara, I also want to apologize again, but not just with words. I want to do something that shows I understand. What do you have in mind? I've been thinking since Christmas, and I would like to offer my services as a corporate lawyer, pro bono, to any charity that works with burn victims, to help with negligence cases, with insurance companies that don't want to pay for treatments, with any legal battle these people face. Dr. Rhodes brightened. Danielle, that is wonderful. You know the value of that work. I know many cases where victims need legal representation but cannot afford it. Then consider it done. Dad, if you can connect me with the right organizations, I'll start immediately. I will. And Danielle, I am proud of you. This is exactly the kind of person I hoped you would be. Over the following months, I watched the change continue. It wasn't perfect. There were occasional setbacks, moments where old attitudes briefly surfaced. But each time it happened, Jackson or Danielle immediately corrected themselves, apologized, and adjusted their behavior. Jackson began bringing his work colleagues to the house, introducing them to Alara with pride. This is my mother, the bravest woman I know. Let me tell you the story of how she saved me from a fire when I was 7. And he would tell the complete story, omitting no details, minimizing no sacrifice. His colleagues listened in awe, looking at Alara with genuine respect. Danielle kept her promise. She became involved with 3 different charities that worked with burn victims, offering free legal consultations, representing pro bono cases, and using her skills to help. And Dr. Rhodes continued working on his book. He kept us updated on the progress, sharing drafts of the chapter about Alara, asking for feedback. This chapter is the heart of the book, he told us during one of his visits, because it's not just about the medicine. It's about the sacrifice, about the love, about how scars tell stories that need to be heard. 6 months after that Christmas, Dr. Rhodes invited the entire family to an event in New York City. It was the preliminary launch of his book at a medical conference where he would present some selected chapters to his colleagues. I want you to be there when I present Alara's chapter, he said, because this story is not just mine to tell, it's yours to share. We all traveled to New York. Alara and I, Jackson and Danielle. The event was at an elegant hotel with hundreds of burn specialists from across the country. Dr. Rhodes took the stage and began his presentation. He spoke about the advances in burn treatment over the last 40 years, about extraordinary cases, and about lessons learned. Then came the moment for Alara's chapter. 25 years ago, I met a patient who changed my perspective on what it means to be brave. A mother who ran through a burning building to save her 7-year-old son. She suffered 2nd and 3rd-degree burns over 20% of her body, and during 6 months of painful treatment, she never complained, never gave up, and always maintained her determination. He projected photos onto a large screen, the professionally documented photos of Alara's scars, showing the extent of the damage, but also the beauty of the healing, the visual testament to her heroism. These scars tell a story, he continued. A story that we all need to hear, because in our society, scars are often seen as imperfections, as something that should be hidden. But these scars, Alara Hayes' scars, are badges of honor. They are evidence of a love so profound that she was willing to sacrifice her own body to protect her son. The audience was in absolute silence, looking at the images as listening to the storm. Alara is here today, and, with her permission, I would like her to stand up. Alara looked at me nervously. Edward, there are so many people. Do it, love. This is your story. Share it. Alara stood up. In the audience of hundreds of specialized doctors and people who had seen the worst imaginable burns, stood up too and began to applaud. The applause grew, filling the hall, a recognition from medical colleagues who understood exactly what Alara had endured, what she had survived found, and what she represented. I saw tears streaming down Alara's face, but these were tears of joy, of validation, of finally being seen for who she was, a hero. Jackson was next to me, also standing, also applauding, with tears running down his face. Dad, look at this. All these doctors, all these people recognizing Mom as she should be. Yes, son, as it always should have been. When the applause finally stopped, Dr. Rhodes continued. Alara's son is also here today. Jackson, would you join your mother on the stage? Jackson froze for a moment, then stood up and walked toward the stage. He stood next to Alara, taking her hand, the scarred hand that had saved him 25 years ago. Jackson, Dr. Rhodes said, would you like to say a few words? My son looked at the audience, seats of waiting faces, and took a deep breath. When I was 7 years old, there was a fire in our house. I don't remember much of that night. I was asleep when it started. But what I do know, what I've learned, is that my mother ran through the flames to reach me, and the price she paid, the scars she carries, are the daily reminder of the greatest love there is. He paused, composing his emotions. For years, shamefully, I must admit, I was embarrassed by those scars. I asked my mother to cover them up, to hide them. And that is a remorse I will carry for the rest of my life. But 6 months ago, something changed. My family had a painful but necessary conversation. And I finally understood that these scars are not something to be ashamed of. They are something to celebrate. The audience listened intently. So, today, in front of all of you, in front of the medical professionals who dedicate their lives to helping people like my mother, I want to say publicly, Mom, I am proud of you. I am proud of your scars. I am proud of your courage. And I will spend the rest of my life making sure everyone knows the story of the hero who gave me life twice, once when I was born, and again when she saved me from the fire. The applause that followed was deafening, and I watched Alara embrace Jackson on the stage, both crying, finally healing after so many years of accumulated pain. After the presentation, dozens of doctors approached Alara. They shared their own stories of brave patients. They thanked her for sharing her story. They asked permission to use her case in their own teaching. One young doctor approached with tears in her eyes. Mrs. Alara, I just finished my residency in burn treatment, and there are days where it is so difficult, where patients suffer so much, that I wonder if I can really do this. But your story, your courage, reminds me why I chose this specialty, to help heroes like you. Thank you, Doctor, Alara replied. And know that your work matters. Dr. Rhodes saved my life, and doctors like you will save many others. That night, after the event, the family went to dinner at an elegant restaurant in New York City. Dr. Rhodes joined us, along with some of his colleagues who wanted to know Ilara better. During dinner, Dr. Rhodes made an announcement. Ilara, Edward, I have news. The book is going to be published in 6 months, and the publisher wants to do something special. A presentation tour in several cities where I will share the stories from the book. And I would like, if you are willing, for you to accompany me to some of those presentations so that people can meet the real Ilara, not just read about her. Doctor, I'm not good at public speaking. Ilara began. You don't need to be. You just need to be yourself. Tell your story in your own words. That is more powerful than any prepared speech. Then yes, I will. Over the following months, life continued to transform. Jackson and Danielle visited us regularly, not just for special occasions, but simply to spend time together. Danielle had developed a genuine relationship with Ilara, asking about her life, her work as a teacher, her hobbies, getting to know her as a complete person instead of just a mother-in-law. And the biggest surprise was when Danielle announced that she was pregnant. We're having a baby, she said during a family dinner. And Mrs. Ilara, Edward, we want to ask you something. Anything, Ilara said, excited. We want this baby to grow up knowing the story of their grandmother from the very beginning, not as something shameful that is hidden, but as the heroic story it is. And when they are old enough to understand, we want you personally, Mrs. Ilara, to tell them how you got those scars. Ilara cried with joy. It would be an honor. And there's something else, Jackson added. If it's a girl, we want to name her Ilara, in your honor. 6 months later, baby Ilara Marie was born, named in honor of her heroic grandmother. And when I held her for the first time at the hospital, looking at my granddaughter, I thought about how this small creature would grow up knowing the truth, valuing the sacrifice, understanding that scars tell stories of love. Dr. Rhodes's book was published and became an unexpected success, not only in medical circles, but also with the general public. Ilara's story resonated with thousands of people who had experienced trauma, who carried their own scars, who needed an example that survival was possible and honorable. Dr. Rhodes organized book presentations in 10 different cities across the United States, and Ilara and I accompanied him to all of them. In every city, hundreds of people came to hear the stories. And when Ilara shared her experience, when she showed her scars without shame, when she spoke of the love that motivated her to run through the fire, people wept. After each presentation, people approached Ilara. Some were burn victims who felt inspired. Others were parents who had made similar sacrifices, and others were simply people who needed to hear that true love sometimes requires sacrifice, and that the sacrifice is worth it. A woman in Dallas approached after one presentation with her teenage daughter. Mrs. Ilara, my daughter suffered burns in an accident 3 years ago, and since then, she has hidden. She has refused to go out. She is ashamed of her scars. I brought her to hear your story, hoping it would inspire her. The daughter, a young woman of about 15, had scars similar to Ilara's on her arm and neck. Ilara approached her with a gentle smile. What is your name? Sophia, the girl replied in a timid voice. Sophia, may I show you something? Ilara extended her arm, fully displaying the scars. These scars are 25 years old, and for a long time, I hid them too. I wore long sleeves, even in the summer heat, scarves that covered my neck, because I thought people would judge me. And you stopped hiding them? Yes. 10 years ago, I decided that these scars are part of my history, They are not something to be ashamed of. They are evidence that I survived something terrible, that I was strong enough to endure the pain. That love was more powerful than fire. And people don't stare at you anymore? Oh, they still stare. But I learned something important. Their discomfort is their problem, not mine. And the people who truly matter, the ones who genuinely love me, see past the scars. They see the complete person with her story, with her strength, with her courage. Sophia began to cry. I'm so afraid that no one will ever see me as normal again. You are not normal, Sophia. You are extraordinary. You survived something that many people don't survive. You are a warrior, and those scars are your battle armor. I saw Sophia's mother cry too, grateful that finally someone was telling her daughter what she had been trying to say for 3 years. Alara spent half an hour talking with Sophia, sharing techniques for dealing with the stares, strategies for responding to inappropriate questions, and, most importantly, instilling in her the confidence that her life was not over. It was just beginning in a new way. When we left that night, Alara was exhausted but radiant. Edward, did you see that? We were able to help that girl. Our story, my story, really matters. It always mattered, love. It's just that now, more people know it. 2 years after that Christmas that changed everything, the family gathered again to celebrate. But this time, it was different. This time, Jackson and Danielle arrived early to help with the preparations. This time, there were no comments about Alara's clothes. There were no suggestions that she cover her scars. There was nothing but genuine love and respect. Little Alara Marie, now 1.5 years old, crawled around the house. And when she saw her grandmother, she crawled directly toward her, reaching out with her tiny hands for Alara's scarred arm, touching it with innocent, childlike curiosity. Someday, Jackson said, watching the scene, when she's old enough, we'll tell her the story, and she'll grow up knowing that her grandmother is the bravest person in the world. And she'll know that scars are not something to fear, Danielle added, that they are stories written on the skin, and that everyone has meaning. That night, after everyone left, Alara and I sat in the yard under the stars. She was quiet, thoughtful. What are you thinking about? I asked. How things changed. 2 years ago, on that terrible Christmas, I thought I had lost my son forever, that the shame he felt about me was permanent, irreparable. And now I see that sometimes things have to break completely in order to be rebuilt correctly. That confrontation, painful as it was necessary because it forced everyone to face the truth, to say the things that had been hidden for years. And Jackson changed. Yes, not perfectly. He still has moments, but the change is real. It's sustained. And most importantly, he is teaching his daughter from the beginning, breaking the cycle. And you, Alara, how do you feel? She looked at her arms, her scars visible under the moonlight. I feel proud. For the first time in 25 years, completely proud, because these scars saved my son. And now they are helping others too, through the book, through the presentations. I found purpose in the pain. It always had purpose, love. I know, but now others see it too. If you are listening to this story, if it resonates with you in any way, I want you to understand something fundamental. Scars, whether physical or emotional, are not defects. They are maps of survival, evidence of battles fought, testimonies that we were strong enough to endure the unbearable. My wife, Alara, carries burned scars because she ran through fire to save our son. For years, our son was ashamed of those scars. Our daughter-in-law mocked them. And on one Christmas, everything exploded when our daughter-in-law's father, the same doctor who had saved Ilara 25 years before, witnessed the mockery and confronted the truth. It was painful. It was devastating. But it was also necessary, because sometimes love requires confrontation. Sometimes protecting someone means setting tough boundaries. Sometimes teaching respect means implementing real consequences. I changed my will, reducing my son's inheritance until he demonstrated 5 years of sustained respect. Some might say I was too harsh, but that ultimatum was exactly what Jackson needed to finally wake up, to understand that actions have consequences, that respect is not optional, but fundamental. And today, 2 years later, I see my son transformed, not perfect, but genuinely different. I see my daughter-in-law using her professional skills to help burn victims. I see my granddaughter growing up in an environment where her grandmother's scars are celebrated, not hidden. From my home in Atlanta, Georgia, at 63 years old, with a wife who has become an inspiration to thousands, I wish you the courage to confront family injustices when necessary, to defend those you love, even when it means conflict, and to set boundaries that protect the dignity of all. And I wish you the wisdom to recognize that scars, all scars, tell stories that deserve to be heard, that survival is heroic, and that sacrifice for love is the purest form of courage. Ilara taught me that 25 years ago when she ran through the fire, and she continues to teach it today, every time she shares her story, every time she inspires someone else who carries their own scars, every time she proves that true love leaves marks, and those marks are beautiful. Thank you for listening to our story. And if it helped you in any way, if it gave you the courage to defend someone you love, to celebrate scars instead of hiding them, to demand the respect we all deserve, then please share it. Because somewhere there is another person ashamed of scars that should be badges of honor. There is another family where sacrifice is not valued. There is another son who forgot that he is alive only because someone loved him enough to sacrifice themselves. And everyone needs to know that scars are not the end of the story. They are the beginning of a new one, a story of survival, of strength, of love that overcomes everything, even fire. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.